the Q stuff that's going on right now, and the appearance of potentially the arrest of high-level paedophiles, I'm watching it because I'm holding my breath in hope that, you know, something might happen. And I think one of the things I was just thinking as you was talking about Jim Carrey, same with Russell Brand, you go through levels of, oh, I hope this person really is a good one. And then you start to look beyond it, and you realise that all they're doing is recognising the level of consciousness that humanity's getting in there first so they can steer you off track again. And it is a really difficult one, because I have got this heartfelt feeling that as the collective become more conscious, the tipping point's reached, then that momentum, because I do believe love is more powerful than evil and than fear, and once we get to a certain level of people with that higher frequency, that collective is going to steer the reality in a better direction. That's how I feel it's going, and this is why they're doing everything in their power, chemtrails, GMOs, subliminal stuff, everything they possibly can to try and keep us from raising our consciousness.
Well, that's right. I see these people as Pied Pipers. They're there to lead people off in certain desired directions, to keep them away from looking somewhere else or potentially going somewhere else. But really, this world has changed so much so quickly. I don't recognise this world anymore. I'm not that old. But this world has changed so much in my lifetime. Even in the last 20 years, you could take it back to 1998, 20 years ago. Hardly anyone was using the internet then. Not everyone had a mobile phone. You could still phone up a bank or an electricity company and have the phone answered by a human being. You could get in a car and get a road atlas out and work out where you wanted to go by reading a map instead of your car telling you where to go. Everything now is done digitally, electronically. We've got the smart grid system coming online now. We've got wireless technology everywhere. Everything is being shifted towards this kind of transhumanist, AI, futurist society. And it's all happened so quickly. And I just wonder how we all could have been asleep at the wheel so much to allow all this stuff to creep up on us like a mugger in a dark alley and not see it coming. And look at the state that we're now in society, and look at the burden that those of us that have taken the responsibility to wake up to the reality that we live in and resolve to do something about it. Look at the challenge that we have now taken on, the small number of us that are doing this work, because collectively humanity has not been paying care and attention to what's going on around them. And a ridiculously, absurdly, farcically small number of these occult controllers have managed to dictate and manipulate the lives of billions of other people. You would never have believed it would have been possible if somebody had written this down and proposed it as the script of a Hollywood movie. It would be thrown out on the basis that it's too far-fetched and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it does feel like that.
And yet here we are living in it.
Yeah. The one thing that does hearten me, though, is one of the things that David Icke said is that, you know, he's been in this game 20-odd years, 30 years, and he's written 20-odd books. And he's a person that people go to, the whistleblowers like yourself with information in that field, go to you. And he said recently he's seen a shift. If the type and quality of people that are coming to him and the number of people that are actually talking to him in airports or wherever he goes, and it's amazing that the momentum's getting going. And when you've been doing it as long as you have, and you're out there and you get, you know, attacked by trolls, and you think, why am I doing this? And you feel like the majority of people are not waking up, and it seems pointless and it seems too big a task. What I hold on to is the number of people turning vegan, the number of people, citizen reporters now, doing the jobs of journalists that journalists should have been doing, actually calling out the lies within the media. And there's an awful lot, and the internet has changed a massive amount of stuff. Do you agree?
Absolutely, I do. I'm not a fan of technology. I think it's pretty well known that I'm not. I'm considered to be quite a Luddite when it comes to technology. And I can see all the ways in which technology is being used to surveil and monitor and control us. But the one exception for which I hold great affection and respect is the internet. Because I think that's the one that's backfired on the controllers big time. It was obviously invented as another method of surveillance and control and data gathering, but I think we, the public, the people, have made this particular tool our own in terms of being able to share information, empowering, liberating information, and that is what is almost wholly responsible for the number of people we do have in the world today that have taken on a big understanding of truth and of personal freedom and what's really going on. So the internet, in so many ways, is our friend. And I don't hold out too much hope for many things the way things are going, Joe, as I mentioned to you earlier. If you were chatting to me on another day, maybe I'll be more optimistic about it. But I can say that one thing that does fill me with optimism and hope is the knowledge, in my mind, that if they try and shut down the internet completely, or even massively restrict it and say, you can't look at these sites, we're shutting this down, I think there would be massive public resistance, and I think people would rise up and they would revolt and say, we're not having this. What we need is people standing up about all kinds of things and saying, yes, we're not having this. We're not having smart meters. Nobody is having smart meters. What are you going to do about it? We're saying no. What are you going to do about it? You know, we don't consent to fracking. We don't consent to chemtrailing. None of us are having it. We're not having you in office if you support this. What are you going to do about it? That's what we need. None of that is going to...
You know what I think is going to break the back of it to get people, as David Icke says, to get a backbone and get off the backsides? I believe it's when the truth and it's coming out about the paedophilia and the satanism of paedophilia, because when humanity understands what has been done to the children of our society, and that is where it's linked across all of these embedded organisations, when they realise the sheer scale of it, the horrific nature of what's going on, and they actually look at it and realise the innocent children have had this done to them, I think that's going to make people get up. But that's what I believe it needs to come out, and even if it's graphic stuff, because people will then, like the internet, they've got an attachment to it. If a society does not look after its children, then what kind of society are you?
Well, it's my belief that people are not inherently evil. Others may disagree, but I think lying at the very root of human nature, the vast majority of people, if they're not psychopaths, if they're not, clinical psychopaths, primary or secondary psychopaths or sociopaths, or they've got narcissistic tendencies, the majority of people are basically want what is good. They don't want war, they don't want conflict, they just want to be with their families, they want to love their children, they want to live freely, they want to do what they enjoy doing, they don't want to cause harm to others. They've been manipulated and coerced into doing that through the lifestyles that they lead, but that's happened without their true knowledge of what's going on. So at the basic core of things, people are not evil, and they're not malevolent in their intent. But the controllers have harnessed people's good nature and twisted and distorted it into something else. So I like to think that if large numbers of people did understand what is really going on with institutionalized paedophilia and all this horrific child abuse and satanic ritual abuse that's going on, they would be absolutely outraged and absolutely incensed, particularly the people that have children, particularly the parents. And I like to think that they would rise up and there would be some pretty bloody major changes overnight. But I just wonder what it's going to take to get that level of awareness out to people. We had the Jimmy Savile thing. That was a golden opportunity for the British public to take on a full understanding of the true nature, the true scale of this stuff. That should have led to the shutting down of the BBC. It should.
I think what it was, people couldn't process it. It's this cognitive dissonance. They couldn't believe it was possible, that they thought it was just one bad guy doing it and everyone had just turned a blind eye kind of thing. I don't think they realised or were willing to look at that it's actually intentionally going on amongst a group of lots of high-profile people who are intentionally taking children into that. And it's starting to be drip-fed. And even in the truth movement, there's a lot of people turned away from stuff that's coming out, like the Hampstead children saying, no, it's not true. And blaming the mother for putting it out there, and there wasn't a readiness for it, and I think it's been drip, 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 and it's starting to get to the point where there's enough people now in the collective consciousness ready to look at the darker aspects of it, which it's not pleasant, but we've got to see what's going on before we can change it. And it's all linked to the subliminal stuff in the music industry, all of it.
It is, yeah, and we can get back to that shortly. But they do seem to be finding ways of heading off all these revelations as they come out. So the Jimmy Savile thing, as you say, was chalked up generally as, oh, he was just one bad apple and he got away with it. We don't know how he did, but somehow he just did all this stuff in secret for 50 years. But why were people not calling for all the director generals of the BBC, under whose watch this stuff happened, to stand up there and explain how we could have been allowed to get away with this? Why were people not refusing in their mass numbers to pay the TV licence fee anymore and say we're not supporting this disgusting organisation? Then when you had the whole Pizzagate stuff, which emerged round about the time of the US election at the end of 2016, that was a golden opportunity for the American public to take on an understanding of how paedophilia is woven into the very fabric of American political life.
I think that's still rolling out, because the amount of people watching alternative media now who are alluding to Pizzagate, to paedophilia, to Satanism, the amount of times you hear these terms in the alternative media, and you'll watch a video and they'll have 70,000 views within 3 days. So, there's something going on right now that is linked, it's getting out there more and more, and the viewing figures of things like CNN and the mainstream media, that they're not anywhere near like they're portraying. It's like they play them in airports and public places, gyms and things like that, but actual people are choosing to go onto the internet now to look at the news. Not someone like my dad still watches BBC and thinks that if it's not on there, I'm just some nutty person who's naive and believes anything.
Oh, bless him.
But there's a lot more people choosing to look at things that are resonating, that are actually putting these key words out, like Pizzagate, paedophilia, Satanism, and there's too many people coming out with it right now, and I think that we're in a big shift. We're just on the cusp of it, I believe.
They're clearly very afraid of being rumbled, and you can look at some of the comments that some of these key figures have made over the years. There was a comment that David Rockefeller made many, many years ago where, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, we're grateful to the editors of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all these other major media operations for not subjecting us to the spotlight of scrutiny, because without this we could never have achieved all the things that we have under the radar. It was words to that effect. Then there was a comment that George Bush Sr. made in an interview in the early 90s, I think, where he said words to the effect that if the American public ever found out what we've been doing, they would chase us down the street and string us up from the nearest lamppost. So they know that if we in our mass numbers ever get wise to what they've been doing to us, it's game over, and they're finished overnight. So it's a numbers game. We just got to get those numbers, and we've got to get people taking personal responsibility, not just shrugging this stuff off, not writing off those of us that are communicating this as nutters, as crazy, as conspiracy theorists. Grow a backbone, take responsibility for your family, your children, your own future, and face up to what's going on, because humanity is screwed otherwise.
I'm really optimistic, and it sounds crazy because I look at some dark stuff, and I'm optimistic because of the number of people looking at it, because of the high-profile, highly intelligent whistleblowers in all sectors of society that are now coming forward, because we're literally at the crossroads. If they do not come forward and speak out, we are screwed. Yeah, we're at that.
Those of a religious persuasion keep telling us we're in the end times, and I don't really doubt that, because what happens over the next few years, couple of decades maximum, is going to dictate where the whole of the rest of humanity goes from this point forward. Our generation, we adults alive today, with the ability to take responsibility for our actions, are going to dictate where the human race goes from here.
Yeah.
That is how fundamental this situation is.